Fucking technology, man.
You don't have
How are you?
to.
uh,
Okay. Okay.
Former Warner
So
Brothers senior vice president turned producer Bill Daly. How are you? You look good.
thank you. I'm feeling pretty good.
Back from Vietnam, a
Back from
trip we can't
Vietnam.
discuss too much about.
Why not?
Uh,
Oh, because I
your
was taken prisoner and I was afraid they were headhunters and all that. If they look at the
what
videos I sent.
what did you see? Did you go to Way City?
No, I didn't go to Kuwait. No,
No.
no.
What did you
I
see
went
out
to
there?
Saigon.
Mm.
From Saigon, we took a trip out to Halong Bay, and then back to the airport. We flew to Saigon. They call it Ho Chi Minh City. Everything officially is Ho Chi Minh City, but everybody calls it Saigon. We went there, we flew there because it's Vietnam is, I mean, the difference between two distance, not different, the distance between Hanoi to Saigon is like Boston to Miami. So we flew, and the weather change. I mean, it's all tropical. The entire country is under the Tropic of Cancer. So it's in the tropics. But boy,
Mm.
down south, is it hot and humid like you wouldn't believe.
Uh, Saigon is such a better name. I mean, with all due respect to Ho Chi Minh,
I don't
who
have any respect for Ho Chi Minh.
well, listen, I mean, Ho Chi Minh is dead. He did travel the world. You know, Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh first took up arms against the Japanese occupation in World War II.
Well, he started before that. He tried to get the United States to help him
He
get
did, and
free
we
from the
wouldn't.
French during World War One. Well, we were allies to the French in World War One, and we couldn't, no matter what anybody's desire was, we couldn't let World War One was fought by the United States so that France and Britain wouldn't go under because they owed us so much money. And if Germany won that war, we never would have gotten our money back. That's the reason, the real reason we went into World War One.
And isn't that what it's always about on some level?
Yes, it is. It is.
So I have something to show you.
Oh, okay.
I have found a few interesting clips of Siskel Ebert talking about movies that you worked on at Warner Brothers.
Okay.
And I want to get your opinion on some of
Okay.
this. So let me show you something. Can you hang tight for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Meow.
Michael Keaton is back as the Dark Knight, pursuing two very different villains in Batman Returns. One of 5 new summer movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, including Goldie Hawn's latest, plus a look at a featurette by Batman director Tim Burton. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is indeed Batman Returns, another excursion into the dark and murky world of Gotham City, where a bizarre band of characters enact their twisted destinies. This sequel once again stars Michael Keaton in the title role, and once again, Batman is more of an enigma than a leading man. Little effort is made to get behind his elaborate facade, although he's back with as many high-tech gadgets as ever.
Take one step closer, Mr. Batman. You missed.
What's new this time are some fresh characters, including a romantic interest of sorts for Batman. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Catwoman.
Who are you? Who's the man behind the bat? Maybe you can help me find the woman behind the cat.
Also new, Danny DeVito as the Penguin, a grotty little man who was abandoned by his parents, raised in the sewers by penguins, and now wants revenge on society.
What do you want? Ah, the direct approach. I admire that in a man with a mask. You don't really think you'll win, do you?
But the real villain this time is Tycoon Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken as a power-hungry manipulator who wants to drain Gotham of its energy.
You're a well-respected monster. And I am, to date, not.
Frankly, I feel it's a bum rap. I'm a businessman. Tough, yes. Shrewd, okay. But that does not make me a monster.
Batman Returns was once again directed by Tim Burton, whose credits also include Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands. And Burton is one of the most interesting stylists at work in the movies today. His movies are always terrific to look at. Batman Returns is consistently fascinating as a visual experience. But it's sort of hard to care about this movie. The storyline is confusing, the characters are only sketchily developed, and it's impossible to get involved in the fantastical story. I always felt I was watching from the outside. There are some strange contradictions here. Batman is not a successful movie, but it is, visually at least, an inspired one.
Well, you know, Roger, I think that there are elements to get involved in the story. I did, and I enjoyed the picture. And the two parts that I enjoyed were the Penguin and the Catwoman characters. I think Michelle Pfeiffer is a good comedian and doing good light comedy when we see her as the office worker who's going to be turned in after she's abused into Catwoman. And then Danny DeVito, I thought was actually pretty threatening and sad as this little baby, this ill-formed baby who's abandoned. And I thought, this is what Tim Burton does. He gives us characters, including Batman himself, who all have this private pain that they then work out publicly.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is with Catwoman and with the Penguin is that they emerge, they are developed as characters, we get the backstory, and then they don't go anywhere. There is no engine pulling this train. There is no story to really get us from the beginning of this movie to the end, and instead what you have are set pieces, set design, character design, costume design, even personality design, but no narrative.
The problem in the picture, it's not a perfect picture. The problem is the Max Schreck character. Frankly, he isn't particularly interesting. And his story and what he wants to do and how these other two characters fit in, I agree with you, that isn't worked out. But the point is that in seeing this story, I just saw this as a personal story rather than an action story.
Yeah, but the thing is, maybe if the Penguin had wanted to do what it is that the Shrek character wants to do,
that would
give him some kind of an agenda.
I agree with you.
Because the problem is you have the two most interesting characters basically standing around as participants in somebody else's story.
There's no need for Max Schreck, Christopher Walken, in this picture at all.
And yet I would say, once again, Burton makes great-looking pictures.
Okay.
All right, so you're laughing. We just saw Siskel and Ebert take a look at Batman Returns, and you got a lot on your mind, I can tell.
Well, they are both right.
Yes.
Absolutely both right. The criticism is valid, and what Gene Siskel liked was right. One of the things you have to there's a couple things that I can explain what the problem is. Okay, so they complained about the Christopher Walken character Max Schreck never being like fully developed, didn't really go anywhere. It's the same thing when he was the guy in James Bond, when he did View to a Kill, where he was the Bond villain. Okay, it was so weak. And the thing about Christopher Walken is that he's very threatening and very diabolical when it's a one-on-one, when you personally have something at stake, because he's a guy you want to get a close-up on for him to be really threatening. Okay, and then you he is sort of a caricature of himself in so many ways with the affected voice and stuff like that. It was very effective as like a gangster and stuff like that. So when the stakes are one-on-one, he really is a powerful threat. When it's the world that's being threatened, Christopher Walken is not up to the task. That's the thing, at least the way they've cast him in these movies. Okay, and I love Christopher Walken. They're right about character development, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it's great on design. Okay,
Yes.
now in the Bob and Terry era, these were kids' movies. These were cartoons. They were comic books. It was Chris Nolan who brought them into the adult world. And like we did when we did the preview, we did a preview, you know, where you collect cards for Batman and Robin, the one that George Clooney did. And the last one that Joel Schumacher did. They were upset. Because nobody knew where we were previewing. I think I found out probably before a lot of other people did.
Las Vegas, wasn't it?
It was Las Vegas, yes, but it was a big secret. So Bob and Terry didn't even make an effort to find out at a time, and they were upset when they found out it was Las Vegas because that's an adult city, and they always viewed the movies as kids movies. So, and they didn't think we were getting the right audience there in Las Vegas. I think we did though, because there were a lot of younger people there. It was at a United Artists Theater on the Strip, believe it or not. Oh, no, 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 I'm wrong. Okay, I'm totally wrong on that. We had it at the Palace Station. There was a theater right next door to the Palace Station. But I remember a lot of other people were talking about this Regal Cinema on the Strip, and we went to visit it. But that's not where we did the movie. Okay, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, in regards to Palace Station, we have an executive who will remain nameless who had a fun night at the Palace, out on the Strip, was staying at the Palace Station, mistakenly tanked, told the taxi driver, uh, like Boulder City, and woke up like halfway driving through the desert.
Oh my
All
God.
right,
Oh
well,
my
he'll
God.
remain named, but you know what I have to say? I agree with both of them on this too. Somewhere in this is Doug Jones running around, by the way. At least he told me. But I haven't seen the movie recently to actually been able to pinpoint him. But Walken brings the Walkenism with him. He's brilliant, but he pulls camera, and of course, he does that whole. I think that's a bum rap on how villainous I actually. I
Right.
agree. He's not needed in the movie, but it's hard to say that about Walken because he's so lovable on screen.
Right.
But
But you
it
don't have the same sense of menace. And it was the
right,
same thing with the James Bond movie. You didn't have that same
yeah.
sense of menace when he was the villain.
Because doesn't he, like, when I look at him as an actor on screen, I feel like his mind skips a sentence. Like he's like, and he's trying to remember it, and then he bounces back to what maniacal. I'm a big Walken fan, make no mistake. But it is, and he's fun to imitate, especially around the office. But I agree. I think everyone looks great, and I think DeVito is fantastic
Well,
in this.
me
And
too.
yeah, and they did recognize that. They did recognize that, Pfeiffer pulls it off. See, I misremember all of these reviews because I had like a running conflict with these guys, which is why this has been so fun to do. But
Oh
so
yeah.
Siskel liked it, Ebert did not, but Ebert seemed to respect it, which I would
I
have to
think
say is
so.
kind of where I'm at on it,
Well, because
honestly.
he had nothing but praise for
All
Tim.
right. So,
Hmm.
real quick, in regards to Batman Forever, there is a legendary story that we cannot tell here because Bill Daly gets pissed.
Oh
But it
yeah,
does
he's
involve Catwoman and a
well,
potential actress to play Catwoman. The other thing about this is we revealed that Tim Burton, when he traveled under the fake name Ricky Ricardo, which we still think
yes.
is hilarious.
Yes, he
Good
did.
choice,
Yeah, he
good
did.
choice.
He did. And we would have to buy the seat next to him, first class seat. We'd have to buy the one next to him so nobody would sit next to him.
Yeah.
I have to think that I don't think it was a power trip. I just think that he is really that eccentric. Because there was
Mm,
never anything mean or anything about him. But let me tell you, the thing I enjoyed the most about this movie was working with Denise Denovi. It was the first time I had worked with her, and she was Tim's producer at the time.
yeah.
And then she went on to have her own deal at Warner Brothers. And the last movie I worked on with her was The Lucky One, one of those Nicholas Sparks books. Because she made a deal with Nicholas Sparks. I think she produced every single movie that was made of his books through various companies, like
Mm.
New Line, which is now part of Warner's, but New Line was a separate part of Time Warner at the time. New Line and Universal and stuff. So Denise has that constant thread of um, material that's available to her for a specific audience.
Hey, do you remember when Batman Forever was being shot? Do you remember those days? Did they do that
Yeah.
in England?
No, the first Batman was done in England, the one with
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson. All the others were done on the lot until Nolan. And then the first one that Nolan did, Batman Begins,
Hmm.
right? That's what it was called, Batman Begins.
Right.
Um, that was in England. They shot that in England and posted it in England, I believe. I remember they were at Shepperton. I remember having to go over and meet with Emma Thomas, Chris's producer slash wife, and they were using up a bunch of stages there at the time. I remember I was there for we were mixing Troy at the time, so this is 2004
Hmm.
when I was there. And then Chris shot. He did the stage work, I believe, in England on The Dark Knight, but then the locations were in Chicago. He liked that whole Lower Wacker Drive thing where you could get dark. You could shoot in the dark even though it was broad daylight, because it's basically have you been on, do you know Chicago at all?
No.
Okay, there's Wacker Drive, that's a main street that runs through Chicago. But then there's Lower Wacker, which is underground. It actually goes underground and like you can turn off to go to different places, but I never knew my way around there. I didn't dare drive that. I had a rental car
Yeah.
when I was there on location for another project. They gave me a rental car, and I gave it to the office PA and said, here, use this while, because I don't know where I'm going. Use this when I send you on errands and stuff. Every Friday, it needs to be washed and returned to me because I'm using it on weekends. And then I went to Milwaukee for a weekend, and I would do things on weekends. But Lower Wacker, and it's all over. It's even in The Fugitive, the one that with Andy Davis directed for us with Harrison Ford.
Our buddy, Andy Davis.
Yes. I really liked working with Andy Davis. He was pretty cool.
I had the collateral damage experience. I have the unique history of working with everybody on their failures. I got Keanu Reeves on The Replacements. I got Andy Davis and Arnold on Collateral Damage, and here we go. Anyway,
I liked The Replacements. Can I just tell you that I liked The Replacements?
You're very kind about it.
It could have been better, except that Keanu had just come off The Matrix, and suddenly he wanted it to be more edgy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we all looked at it as a NFL version of Major League.
Right.
And but he wanted it somehow to be more edgy. But still, there's a lot about it that I really liked,
Yeah, those were the days. All right, so I have another film for you to look at, another classic. All right, so sit tight. We're going to bounce to movie number 2.
Coming up next, a review of the most popular film in America right now, Steven Seagal in Under Siege.
I'm thrilled to death to hear that. Yeah.
That's Steven Seagal, of course, in Under Siege, and to date, approximately 6 million people have already seen this film, and I'm sure that makes 6 million satisfied customers, because Under Siege is simply wonderful, an exciting and funny and totally energized action picture with a pair of terrific villains and a very funny hero. Seagal, of course, is the hero, a Navy cook who knows more than just how to stir up good grub. He finds himself on a nuclear warhead-loaded battleship in the Pacific that is suddenly under attack from an American-led terrorist group. Tommy Lee Jones is the bad guy in charge, a disaffected CIA agent.
You really think blowing up a bunch of innocent people is going to change anything? What made you flip like this?
I got tired of coming up with last-minute desperate solutions to impossible problems created by other people.
Jones has either killed or locked up everybody on the ship except ex-Navy SEAL Seagal and a Playboy playmate, Erica Eleniak, who has been brought on board for a party.
Tell you what, I'll carry everything. You kill whoever we run into, all right?
I have a little rule about killing people. Well, actually, I have 2 rules. See, 1, I don't date musicians, and 2, I do not kill people, okay?
Under Siege is a lot of fun. I've been recommending it to men and women alike, stressing it for women, as a matter of fact. There's such a joy to the filmmaking and the performances that it doesn't seem all that violent. Tommy Lee Jones, as always, is a credible villain, and Steven Seagal seems more human than ever before. Obviously, I strongly recommend Under Siege. It's one of the best times you're going to have at a movie this year. It was one of mine.
And I completely agree with you. And when I saw the trailer for this movie, I thought, here we go, Die Hard goes to sea. I thought I could predict the whole movie, and in a way, I could predict the whole movie, but it was really fun because of the performances.
Yeah.
And I think you ought to mention the director, Andrew Davis, because this guy is unsung.
Yes.
And he made Code of Silence, which is the best Chuck Norris picture. He made Above the Law, Seagal's first film. He made The Package with Gene Hackman. He is an extremely efficient action director who here takes a situation that looks completely predictable. And as you say, he has a lot of fun with it.
Well, it is mounted very well. And when that movie term means it's big scale. The shots, what I'm really impressed with is Andrew Davis and his editor. They lay the shots in just when you need them. You're saying, hey, wait a minute, what's happening down at the other end of the ship? And bang, if he isn't there with that shot and picking up that action. The fun of this, we have great casting. We've been Tommy Lee Jones fans for years.
Well, Tommy Lee Jones is a terrific villain here. The surprise is Erica Eleniak as the Playboy playmate, because it's the kind of character in an action picture that is completely extraneous. Right. Here you have all these guys shooting each other, and introduce Miss July of 1989, who has nothing to do with anything and knows it. And she just follows him around, and she's going to hide behind him, and then she learns in the course of an hour or two how to be capable and strong, and it's a terrific change there.
And you can see that this actress is actually playing a part. They didn't. This isn't a documentary. She's very funny. She knows. It is. She uses the kind of Valley speak a little bit that you might expect. It's a wonderful film. Really great fun.
All right, hold up. Bill Daly was going thumbs up the whole way on this one. The small screen was very entertaining.
I can't agree more. It really was a cool project even at the time. And Gene Siskel gave a shout out to the editor, and let's name him. Dennis Verkler was that editor.
Now,
okay.
Verkler, we both worked with. We both worked with Seagal as well. But Verkler was famous. We told the story where if you came to Verkler for an interview, he would not leave a pass at the gate for you. Right. He expected you to somehow invent your way onto the law. It was hilarious. Yeah. But yeah, Verkler was the editor. Good job with him. Did he get the Oscar for this? Was this what he won the Oscar for, or no? Because he did win it.
I don't know. It could have been The Fugitive too. He did The Fugitive as well.
That's probably what it was. But anyway, so yes, Verkler gets his props.
And the thing is that I heard about Dennis Verkler. Like when I came into post-production, I came into post-production from the budgeting department as director of the department. And when I came in to there, like I had heard about Dennis Verkler because he was supposed to be a really tough cookie.
Yes.
And he was in Fred Talmadge's office. And Dennis used to wear black all the time. He was the Phil Mickelson of the cutting room, okay? He always wore black, but he never saw sunlight in his life. So he's all white and pasty looking, so he looked like a ghoul, okay? So maybe that was part of the mystique, that made people intimidated by him. But he was the smartest, one of the funniest. I mean, he had this dry wit. And he was funny, and he was really, really nice. But it's right. He tested people, and he would give, and I don't think anybody got points off if they called me to bring them in for the interview, because I would have done that.
Well, it's a solution. It's a solution.
It is.
I mean, I think that was part of his humor. I think he just kind of laughed at the whole thing he was putting people through. I mean, I liked him. I actually thought he was really likable.
He was.
He scared the hell out of a lot of PAs and editorial people, but he was, I thought, very funny. And he would even do things and then kind of like chuckle to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. He sadly passed away, but
yeah.
Oh my God. That's one of the things I miss the most about, being retired is that, people like that, the personalities that you encounter. And the producer on that movie was Peter McGregor Scott, another real character of the industry,
Don't get me started.
and another really, really good guy that I miss, oh my God, but that movie was, and we were saying the same stuff, this is Die Hard on a ship, but damn it worked. It really did work. Oh my God. He didn't even mention really Gary Busey so much, and Gary Busey ending up being like a closet queen,
Yeah.
And oh my God, it was hilarious.
Well, for my Gary Busey stories, you're going to have to click on another link, but I'll put something below so I won't take your time here. But he was like Kato when you visited him at his house, at his beach house. He would jump out and ambush you. I think it's interesting because they mentioned Tommy Lee Jones about being so good in it, and obviously neither one of them had worked with Tommy Lee Jones, because we could probably tell you a different angle or two. And they love the Playboy Playmate aspect of it, which is, rule number one, I don't date rock stars. And rule number two, not rule number one, but rule number two is I don't kill people.
I don't know.
ridiculous in every sense of the word, but it is a fun movie. They both liked it. I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised they like this because this is one of those movies where you would think that they would kind of be above or elitist to.
No, see, that was the thing about them is that they were, and the same thing with Rod Lurie, he was a critic here in town for the LA
Hmm.
magazine, and then he later had a radio program on KABC and KMPC radio.
Yeah, yeah.
He wasn't a snob. He wasn't a movie snob, and neither were they. They were not movie snobs. They liked the highbrow stuff. They had high standards. Whenever I watched Siskel and Ebert, and if they both liked a movie, then I knew that it was going to be a good movie. If
Hmm.
they didn't like a movie, it didn't mean anything to me because I still liked stuff that they didn't like. I like the movies, and I will give people a pass, for incredibly bad things they might do. I'll give people passes for not being especially deep or intellectual. But then I will really break their balls if there are just flat out things that pull me out of my suspension of disbelief, like Freakier Friday. Okay. So
Oh, there it is.
I'll
That's
just
the
throw that
mention.
little tantalizing bit in
You
there
don't
because
think
I saw that.
Freaky or Friday comes across as believable? Anyway, look, before you go down that road, they also mentioned Andy Davis, who we
Yes.
both worked with, and they gave him his props, which I think this was the one was The Fugitive. The Fugitive was the film that made Warner Brothers fall in love with him, right? And then this, or I
No,
forget the
this
or
was
this is
first.
before my
This
time
was
there.
first.
So,
No, this was first.
mhm.
He got The
Yeah,
Fugitive based on this. I don't think did Andy come back and do Under Siege 2?
I don't think so. I can't recall.
I don't know. He did a number of movies with us. He did Perfect Murder, Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow and Viggo
Hmm.
Mortensen. That's the movie that the famous Dee Dee Allen story that I've told before. That was the movie we were watching in dailies. Um,
Well, wait a minute.
And
What's the
then
Dee
and then I
Allen
think,
story for our
oh,
audience?
I've told this before, so no, I can't because it reflects badly on a couple of people that I really like a lot. I'll tell you, you'll say, oh yeah, we went through that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
When
it's
I tell you
somewhere.
this,
It's
when I
somewhere in
tell
our
you this story
archives.
again, you'll go, oh
All
yeah,
right.
we did that.
All right.
And then I think Collateral Damage might be the last one, at least during my tenure. But we were quickly moving on to Harry Potter and stuff like that. So when Collateral Damage was done, because they held up the release of that because of 9/11. And
Yeah.
we were moving from the Lorenzo era into the Jeff Robinoff era. So things were changing, n not drastically, but things were changing. Things were evolving. And I don't believe we did anything with Andy after that. Although I do remember driving up to Santa Barbara he has a small facility where he would do his editing and stuff. And it's called Chicago Pacific. He's a Chicago native. So I'm not at all surprised that we had two cheerleaders sitting in those chairs, rooting for him, But he's a
Hmm.
really, really good filmmaker. So he owns those props, okay? He deserves it.
Yeah. Well, it is fun to see them mention the director
Yeah,
and then to give us an opportunity to talk about Verkler, the editor, because those
yeah,
stories don't see the light of day often. And man,
yeah. I mean, it was,
they're funny.
there are so many characters in the business,
Oh, yeah. Uh,
and they're not all the characters in the business are nefarious.
no.
Okay, just so people know that, because we hear about the screamers and all that stuff. Like even there's a myth out there about Joel Silver being a screamer, and I think that's from Roger Rabbit. I
Hmm.
think when people are told, "Oh, that's Roger Rabbit playing Raoul, the director," it's like, "Oh my God, this guy." But Joel wasn't like that at all. I mean, you could be on the phone with him and he'd be mad about somebody else. I never heard him saying stuff like that to a person, but I'd hear him on the phone. He'd be on the phone saying, "Oh, and when I get a hold of that guy, I'm going to do this and this and this." And it's just you have to let people vent once in a while, and you can't let their worst moment define them as anything. And not that Roger Rabbit is his worst moment. If that were truly the kind of person he was, then it would be. But Joel was another guy who was really smart he was kind of funny, you know. He would play jokes on himself, like where he would be the butt of jokes and stuff like that. I mean, I've heard him say mean and nasty things to people, but it was never something for publication, and you knew he didn't really mean it. Um, there weren't really that many mean bones in Joel's body, and it's the same thing with Dennis Verkler. You know, it was you know, some people get reputations that they really don't deserve.
It's funny because you had sent me a note and I had misread it. You said it was the note said, "I saw John and he wants to know when are you going to are you going to stop talking about it?" It was a joke.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and the note was referring to John Milius, but I read it as Joel because we talk about him so much. And I actually thought it was funnier that Joel Silver, the idea of Joel Silver sending you a note saying, "Tell that guy to shut the fuck up." And I'm like, "Where's our pajamas, Joel Silver?" That's an inside joke.
Oh, that
obviously.
was something you had posted. You posted
Yeah.
and I could see through the cover of the book. I could see that it was the novelization of The Wind and the Lion that I sent you
Yeah,
because
yeah, which I have here.
John was the author of it, and I knew you knew him, and I was getting rid of stuff from my house, and I thought, oh, Ethan would love this, and pristine copy of The Wind and the Lion in paperback. Okay, and then and I don't know what was on the other side of that you misconstrued as Joel, but it was I was saying John, and John is saying stop talking about him.
Well,
You know?
it seems it's funnier thinking it's Joel because usually with Joel we talk about the caricature of Joel Silver and
Yeah.
our interactions with that persona. But you know, with John Milius, it's all positive because I had such great fun working with him. But it's funny that it's like I thought of course dyslexic. I read it wrong, and I'm like Joel Silver. What? And it was like everyone's like, no, he's talking about John Milius, but it's almost funnier. I could because you could see Joel in a weird comedic way being like, tell that guy to shut the fuck up. Anyway,
Well, and the only reason I mentioned it was because you had taken it in the wrong direction with Joel, and Joel had nothing to do with it, you know.
yeah, and that's okay. That's okay. It's an innocent mistake, but the mistake
And
is funnier.
And the thing is that you and I have a great time talking about all these guys. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and so we mentioned that I went to Vietnam. Okay.
Right.
So what did I say? The first thing I sent to you from Vietnam, the first little video, it was, I can't wait to get back to do your show so that I can talk about John Milius and Oliver Stone being in Vietnam. And I'm in Vietnam right now. And now I can firsthand say, what a couple of pussies.
You know, Milius told me that Stone wouldn't talk to him for about 8 years over the Conan script because Milius, took the project over and Stone had written a draft and a lot of the mysticism was taught. So they had kind of, in a weird way, put their relationship back only a few years prior to me being there. So it's interesting. There's some history between those two. Not all of it
So
good,
but why would Oliver be upset with the person who replaced him as opposed to the people who went out and got a replacement? I'd be upset with the producers unless John turned some of Oliver's stuff that was meaningful to him and turned it into a joke or something. That's the
I
only.
don't know what it really was, what the particulars were. I mean, what got that conversation going was Oliver Stone had sent a book to the office. And I said, "Oh, this is from Oliver Stone." He goes, "Yeah." And then that brought up the story. He didn't talk to me for 8 years over Conan the Barbarian. And sometimes I don't push it beyond that point, or I wouldn't. I'd be like, all right, just because, you don't want to drag someone over the coals twice. And,
Right.
but
But some
anyway,
of
that's
that could be an exaggeration too. So I mean,
true.
sometimes,
True.
because everything is so theatrical. I mean,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I mean, even the
Oh,
people
man.
involved in this are very theatrical. My
Yes.
wife is always telling me I'm too theatrical with.
But in a good way. In a good way. Okay, so that brings us to our next movie. Stand by. All right, here we go.
Okay.
All right, Percy. You first. Excuse me.
The train to Hogwarts leaves from platform number 9 3/4 in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and we'll have an expanded review plus 3 other new movies. I'm Richard Roper.
And I'm Roger Ebert. The first thing to say about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is that the millions of readers of the book are not going to be disappointed. This is a surprisingly faithful adaptation, and for me at least, it visualizes the story a lot like I imagined it. The second thing to say is this is a terrific movie. With ease and charm and enchantment and thrills and humor, Director Chris Columbus and his British cast have created a classic about a young magician at school.
Stick your right hand over the broom and say up.
Up. Wow. Shut up, Harry.
Harry's best friends are Hermione Granger, a bright student played by Emma Watson, and Ron Weasley, played by Rupert Grint. They team up to explore the off-limit secrets of Hogwarts Academy.
Anyone here, mostly?
I thought she's gone. Probably thinks this door's locked. It was locked. And for good reason.
These are smart kids, and it's a good thing, too, when they get involved in a chess game with very high stakes. The seamless combination of drama and special effects here is typical of the whole movie.
You there, D5.
It felt good to be seeing a family movie with intelligence, teeth, and imagination. A movie that creates characters, evokes atmosphere, and tells a story instead of hammering the audience with mindless action. Daniel Radcliffe is convincing as the young hero, properly sober and serious. And then Emma Watson and Rupert Grint provide high spirits in contrast to the more low-key Harry. The faculty at Hogwarts is an all-star cast of British actors. Maggie Smith, Richard Harris, Robbie Coltrane, Alan Rickman, Ian Hart. They know just exactly how broadly they can play without stepping over into farce. Director Chris Columbus showed he could handle kids and special effects in Home Alone, and here he scores a triumph.
It's a complete triumph. And, you know, Chris Columbus wrote Gremlins, so before he started doing movies like Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire, he had the capacity to write kind of darker, subversive stuff. And this is not a movie for little kids. I think they'll be scared by some of the magic, and of course, you know, Harry's what happens to his parents and things like that. But for everybody else, it's a complete winner, I think. And there was such a build-up to this movie, and to have it live up to that and even exceed my expectations was really wonderful.
Yeah, because everybody's expecting the hype is, over-exaggerated, and it's not. And you mentioned how scary it is. I've already gotten some emails from people saying, is this going to be too scary? And you know what? I can remember growing up with movies that really were scary. There's stuff in Wizard of Oz that's scary. It's okay. It's okay for a movie to be scary. It's not over the line. It's not too scary. I think it's just scary enough.
I would agree completely with that. Now, my favorite character is Hermione Granger, played with great verve by Emma Watson. She reminded me of a miniature British version of the Holly Hunter character in broadcast news, a type A personality.
Wingardium Leviosa.
See here, everyone. Miss Granger's done it.
Now, many of the book's delightful elements are faithfully reproduced, as in this scene where the students find out what dorm they're going to be in with the help of the bewitched sorting hat.
Ah, right then. Right. Okay. Gryffindor!
Even with all the wondrous special effects and the joyfully superb work from Smith, Harris, and Alan Rickman, who can get a laugh just by giving you a deadpan look and moving his face just a little teeny bit, I really think the kids are the ones who hold the key to this film. Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and little Emma Watson are in nearly every scene. They're asked to carry this story, and they do it with style and natural ease. In the hands of less talented young actors, the entire Harry Potter franchise could have been in big trouble. Instead, we're treated to the first installment in what truly could be a great series. Even as a standalone effort, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I think, is the Wizard of Oz of its time.
You're right about the kids. You're right about the Wizard of Oz. It's in that league. And Chris Columbus here, I think, has made kind of an Indiana Jones for kids, because some of the amazing set pieces were just a delight. For example, the Quidditch game. That was really well realized. I was wondering, how can they do Quidditch on the screen? And they could.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Then the tendrils, the pit of tendrils that they fall into, which reminds me of similar scenes in Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And then that trip into the Dark Forest where they meet the Centaur guy, you know, and that's kind of scary. And the whole movie just surprised me
with how successful it was. And I think it's important to stress, too, that if you've never read any of the Harry Potter books, if you don't know anything about this kid or the world he lives in, it's still a really good movie. It stands alone as it is. It doesn't end like, coming up next, we'll find out where Harry's caught in the pit and he'll be saved. It's a story that's complete unto itself and really successful at that. It sure is.
All right. So it's interesting to note that Ebert has switched to the other side of the aisle when he brought in Siskel's replacement.
Yeah.
So it's a unique move there, but that's besides the point. So what do you think about this? Was a very extensive look at the film, I thought.
Yes.
They had some hardware to work with.
You know what, I almost was getting tears in my eyes watching this. I mean, so many memories of work on that movie and everything, and the points they made were exactly spot on. They should have given Steve Clovis some props because he's the guy who adapted that book, and it's a very, very close adaptation of the book, but there are things missing like Peeves. We didn't really need the ghost Peeves in there because he was just a troublemaker. So if you bring him into the movies, it distracts you from the main story, and I mean, he would be an impediment to the characters and their quest, for whatever the quest turns out to be. But it would be a nightmare for visual effects because things were happening because it was a ghost that was pushing them around. So I totally agree with Steve Clovis's annexation of that person, or not annexation, but excisation of that character. But more importantly, there's a scene where Harry encounters Snape. He has the invisibility cloak on. This is the great economy that Steve Clovis did. He took like a whole chapter of the book out. So he has Harry in with the Mirror of Erised. He puts the invisibility cloak on to go back to his room because he's not supposed to be out, and he encounters Snape and Quirrell. Now in the book, Harry sees them from a window or something. I don't recall. It's been a long time since I read the book. He sees them and then he gets on his broom and he hovers over them. He flies over them in the dark forest. So here you are going into a set that you don't necessarily need. I mean, we've already built the set, but so by encountering them in the hallway, okay, you've taken away a whole visual effect that would need with the broom flying over them, and them traveling, then taking up the time to travel into the dark forest, having to light that set instead of the hallway that you've already got lit for Harry. Amazing bit of editing there, and economizing in a way that makes it better for the movie, and it cuts a lot of money out, and it probably cuts a day of shooting out, doing it that way. They have the Sorting Hat there, and that was the voice of English actor Ian Carmichael. And I remember the people from the tour they wanted that voice because it's part of the Warner Brothers tour, or it used to be when I was still working there, where you could be sorted. You'd go into the second floor of the museum, and you could be sorted. They were jumping through fire hoops with the people in England to get that voice, just Ian Carmichael's dialogue, doing that thing. And finally it came to my attention and I said, sure, no problem. And I got the accountant on the movie to email it to me as a MP3 file. And it worked perfectly for the tour.
Yeah.
And they might still be using it. It's like when you know the people who know the people.
And that's why you are senior VP.
Well, the thing is that they were asking the wrong people to get involved in this stuff, and then it becomes a big deal because then they have to ask three other people because they weren't personally involved in it. Then they're asking three other people to go get it, and it becomes this big production.
Right. Like Lou Wasserman famously told us, just tell me who the person in the room is that can say yes. That's the only person I want to talk to.
Exactly.
And he was right, and we've since thrown it into practice.
And,
but it is nice to see him look at this movie, isn't it? It's very
and then Roger Ebert talks about how stoic and how sober Harry is in this thing. And remember Chris Columbus describing perfectly what the Harry character was. Now, he wasn't talking to me.
Hmm.
He might have been talking to Mark Solomon, but I was there. There were only like three or four of us there. And he was talking about, Harry, and he said, and that was one of the tightropes he had to walk because Harry basically is a straight man among all these characters because
Right.
he's the guy who's the fish out of water. He is unfamiliar with the magical world in this movie.
Hmm.
And so he really is the straight man, and everybody else really is a character. So what Roger described as being kind of stoic or sober, is exactly right. But Chris's explanation is so much more spot on. But then Chris was directing the movie and had already sussed this out.
So let's talk Columbus for a minute. You like working with him?
Um, that part out.
All right.
No, I mean, you know what? You you can leave it the way it is, and right up to where I say you're going to cut that part out, and then you can start laughing or whatever. The thing about Chris deserves a lot of credit. He did the casting. He approved the sets. He approved the wardrobe.
Hmm.
Alfonso changed a lot of stuff. He approved the locations. Alfonso changed a lot of stuff when number three came up, and it was unnecessary what he did. Except one of the things Alfonso did that was kind of nice was he let the kids wear regular teenage clothes like jeans and stuff instead of the gowns that they would wear in the classroom. So when they're out of the classroom and out on the grounds, they're wearing regular clothes. So that I think that was a good move to make these characters appear older and more accessible to kids around the world. You know, we were really worried about whether kids across America, like in the Midwest and different regions, would understand the accents of all these English kids. And they come from different parts of the United Kingdom and Ireland, and they have different accents, and we were worried that they wouldn't be able to understand them, which is one of the reasons we went to Chicago to do the previews on these movies, and we would do the cards, in
Well,
and plus, Chris was from Chicago, so it was a chance for him to go home and see his family because he had been gone a long time.
all right. So Harry Potter, we are in agreement with Ebert and Roper this time.
It's a great review. I had forgotten that they reviewed it that way. What I thought was the one review that I remember the most, and I don't remember who did it, and it was a newspaper person. I think. I think it was a newspaper person. The one review I remember the most was somebody complaining that they were too close to the books. That were the first one anyway. That that they should have transcended the book with the movie in the way The Godfather did. Okay. Now, I don't know what the demographics are of the people who watch your stuff, but I was around when The Godfather was made. I wasn't working at Warner Brothers, but I was in the business. Okay. Godfather came under tremendous criticism at every step of the way because that it was a beloved book, no less so than Harry Potter. It didn't do the sales, because Harry Potter had that crossover between adults and kids, and The Godfather didn't. So The Godfather didn't do the same book sales, but The Godfather was a huge deal when that book came out. And I remember people waiting for the paperback version to come out that would be more affordable for them, and they could take it on the bus on their way to, into the city in their commute, and stuff like that. Um, and a lot of criticism over casting Marlon Brando, for
Hmm.
one, and Robert Duvall. They were criticizing Robert Duvall. They were criticizing James Caan. Um, and then when the movie got finished, it was like, this deviates too much from the book. Where were they? Where's the Dean Martin character? We have the Frank Sinatra character, quote unquote, with Al Martino. But where's the drunken friend, the Dean Martin character? And they were complaining bitterly about how it didn't follow the book. And then you know, 30 years later, I guess, 1971 was that when that movie is in production. Ours comes out in 2001. 30 years later, somehow that movie transcended the book. They gave it a reverence that they didn't give it when it first came out. And then they're comparing Harry Potter of all things to The Godfather, you know? Now, I don't want to take anything away from The Godfather. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. You know?
Yeah.
But the book, but I don't re I'm sure people complained about Gone with the Wind in the same way, because that was another book, just like The Godfather, that was a huge bestseller, and everybody hung on everything as far as casting went. And people were absolutely saying that it had to be Clark Gable. It could be nobody else. Imagine if they didn't make that deal for Clark Gable. And it, you know, and I'm sure another actor could have stepped in there, not the same presence, perhaps. Errol Flynn would have brought something different to it, but that was one of the options. Jack Warner offered to finance the whole thing if he would cast Betty Davis and Errol Flynn in that movie. Thank God they didn't do that. But you know, people fall in love with literature, and then when the
They
movie
do.
comes out, somebody's going to be disappointed.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, I tell people all the time, these books are 100 times better than the movies are. I'm proud of these movies, but the books are way better. Now, what we used to do at the studio is we would read the books before we got the scripts, because the books, I mean, the books would be out for a year or so before we got the scripts. The first
Right.
book, I had that book for 3 years before we started production on the movie. Um, we would read the books, and then we would like read the script. We'd start watching the dailies and stuff. So for me, my routine was I read the book. We did all the stuff that was necessary to do the movie. We'd see the movie until when the final product, we'd see the movie and then go back and read the book and see what was different. And I think not 100% of the time, but certainly in the 90s, the movies were appropriate. They were appropriate adaptations of those books.
Good to hear. All right, so I got one more for you
Okay.
because we talked about Simmel, our boy,
Oh, Terry.
and so stand by.
Story of two Chicago police detectives who stumble across a big drug ring and then bust it and then are mysteriously pulled off the case by their department acting under instructions of the FBI, of all people. But these are stubborn cops, and they continue their investigation until they discover that a corrupt CIA official is actually behind the drug smuggling. The movie stars a newcomer named Steven Seagal, a martial arts expert who's being promoted by Warner Brothers as their big new action star. Well, he does a lot of his own stunts, all right, like this one. His police partner is played by Pam Grier, herself an action star from the 1970s, who has her best role in a long time.
Excuse me, but I just had to stop and tell you that you look like the sun setting on the waterfall in springtime, baby.
And you got 5 seconds. 3 are up.
Say, you ain't got to be like... Hey, you know, like Lady Cops need boyfriends too, you dig? But you have a nice day just the same.
The movie sets its violence in a lot of offbeat locations, including a grocery store.
Get down.
And a parking garage. Above the Law was co-written and directed by Andrew Davis, who is something of an expert at action thrillers. He's the man who made Code of Silence, which is still the best of all of Chuck Norris's pictures. And he does a confident job this time of showcasing Steven Seagal, who is tall, dark, handsome, and very impressive when he personally throws his victims around in hand-to-hand combat. This guy spent about 10 years as a karate instructor and, as it says in the press release, bodyguard to heads of state before making this movie. The movie is not just a simple thriller, though. It involves not only drug smuggling, but also Central American refugees, police department politics, and Seagal's home life as a happily married father whose family is in great danger. The movie has perhaps 50% too much plot, but it's slick, exciting, and ambitious, and I did like the way it used so many offbeat character actors to create a level of realism underneath that fantasy character played by Steven Seagal.
Yeah, well, he didn't turn me on particularly because he is so heroic, it's almost like he's riding around on an invisible giant horse above the crowd. I mean, you know, they talk about Clint Eastwood. One of the great things about Clint Eastwood is he doesn't give off or know how cool he is when he's in his pictures. He's just plunging ahead doing his job. The way this movie has been structured to feature this guy, he's aware, everyone's aware that he's somebody special. And I didn't like that. In addition, I think there's another thing that you hit on that I didn't like, and that is when you said 50% too much plot. I mean, they've got everything thrown in here. The stuff that did interest me is this film makes a lot of accusations about the CIA and drug smuggling. If they had just winnowed the plot down to that aspect, I think it could have been a sharp little thriller.
Well, it's an ambitious movie, but I want to go back to what you said about Steven Seagal, because I agree with you that they treat him like he's somebody special.
Right.
But I don't agree with you that Clint Eastwood didn't do that, especially at the beginning. If you go back to A Fistful of Dollars, and for a few dollars more, he's playing this super character, this mythical character who strides on a different plane than ordinary men, and I think they're deliberately doing the same thing here with this character. Later on, there's time to let him play a funkier person like Dirty Harry, but right now he's got to be this kind of larger-than-life person, and I think it works as an introduction in a self-conscious attempt to manufacture a movie star, which is what they're trying to do.
No, I don't know. To me, I was much more aware of it this time than I was with Eastwood. Lit on the thriller Above the Law with Steven Seagal. Roger found him impressive? I did not.
All right. You were laughing all the way through that.
Well, the thing is, I don't remember specifically this program, but I do remember that they liked the movie and that they were basically saying that they were manufacturing a star. Right. And that kind of buys into or plays into, there was this theory floating around the hallways of Warner Brothers that Steven Seagal had been a manufactured guy, and that it was somehow an effort initiated by Michael Ovitz with Bob and Terry in tow. And the theory was, one of the stories was, and I'll tell you privately who was pushing this theory. But one of the theories was that they were together because these people used to socialize. I know Bob and Terry used to socialize, and I'm sure Michael Ovitz probably socialized.
Of course.
But the theory was that they were somehow lamenting the old days when Louis B. Mayer or Jack Warner or Daryl Zanuck or Harry Cohn, any of the people could actually create a movie star, anoint somebody, and you are now a movie star, and you send them to the right charm school, because that's really what it is. You send them to charm school, you teach them how to act, how to behave themselves in public and on the set, and you give them the right material to work with, and they will become big stars. And when you look at Steven Seagal, had come from nowhere. Now, he was Michael Ovitz's trainer. He was Michael Ovitz's trainer. I believe that's true. And Michael Ovitz did send him to Sean Connery to teach Sean Connery some Aikido moves. He wasn't a karate guy, as they said. He was in Aikido, which is more slapping, and he was sent over to Sean Connery to teach Sean Connery some moves for some movie he was doing. And Michael Ovitz was Sean Connery's agent. And in the process of their training, he actually accidentally broke Sean Connery's wrist. Did you know that? That's a honest to God story.
I've heard the story. It's
true. He did. I heard it from Sean Connery that Steven Seagal did break his wrist while they were doing a training thing, and it wasn't like a malicious thing. It's just a hazard. Man, it's so funny, and I remember that. Look how thin Steven is in that movie. But still, he was jowly. If you look at his face, if you go back and look at a close-up, he was always kind of jowly. The jowls didn't quite fit the rest of that slender body of his. And of course, as he started to get bigger, became even more jowly. But God, that was That was a good movie. And under, he had great direction from Andy Davis. They certainly put him in the hands of the right person when
So
they did that
today,
movie.
today we can't get away from director Andy. Did Dennis Ferkler cut this too? I wonder.
I don't
Uh,
know. I'll look it up, but I
so
don't
he's
know.
looking it up.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack with this. One, I agree with Siskel. I think the CIA angle is the strongest plot element, and they should have stuck with it thoroughly. I also love the casting in this, particularly Greer. And then there is, there it is funny when they talk about the press release and the clip of that bodyguard for heads of state and all those things that were worked into the mysticism of or the Seagalness that worked its way into becoming the Seagalness of it all. So it is interesting.
That's a great adjective, Seagalness. I mean, it really is.
Well, I mean, it's
No,
I'm kind of curious what the budget was on it because it's in the days where you could, he was a pretty safe bet, because Seagal kind of topped out at like the 60 million mark later.
it was edited by Michael Brown.
Mm,
Um, and I'm looking up his other credits. He did Jaws: The Revenge. I don't know which number Jaws that would be. Um,
4.
he did a lot of television stuff.
All right.
And he has something he's producing something that's in development right now. So he's still, I mean, this movie was 40 years ago, so he's still around. That's a good thing. I'm glad that he has survived as long as he has.
So we both worked with Seagal, you more extensively than me, but he is a character and he is entertaining in his own way.
Yeah.
And were you at Warner Brothers when they did this, Above the Law?
No, I
No,
wasn't.
this is before.
This was like 1988, I think, or
Yeah,
87. I was at Lorimar at the time. Well, yeah, I was at Warner's, but I was at Lorimar.
right.
Um, the thing about Steven Seagal was that the movies all made money, but it was because they only spent very little to make them. They
Yeah.
were in good hands, and Mike Tadros might have produced this. Do you don't
Mm.
remember Mike Tadros? He was a line producer. I wouldn't be surprised if he produced this. Um, but he was really good at getting things to a number. And the problem with Seagal, everything that Seagal was doing, he was only really good for a box office take. We're talking about 40 years ago. So, and
Right.
40 and 30 years ago, where a box office take of $60 million was actually really, really good. It wasn't, like 100 million was like unbelievable, but $60 million was a good take if you were spending 20 million to make them. Okay. I doubt this movie cost 20 million to make. This movie probably, I would guess, I don't know what the budget was, but I'm thinking 15 to make it. Seagal probably didn't get any money at all. Um, but the problem with Stevens movies then were that after Under Siege, they started to spend more money to make them.
Hmm.
But they were still only bringing in, Under Siege did really, really well. But then it went back to where they were bringing in 60 million at the box office. And the problem was that they were spending too much money to make them and they weren't getting the return.
What do you suppose? Do you think this script was written for Steven Seagal, or do you think this was a script that Warner Brothers had that they
You know,
converted
I
into Seagal?
I don't know, but we did hoard scripts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and a famous example of hoarding a script was The Butler. They had a movie called The Butler, and they would not let Lee Daniels have that title to do a movie. Because he did that one where the butler worked in the White House.
Yeah.
And so it had to go out as Lee Daniels, the butler.
Right.
And we had another title we were hanging on to, and we kept looking for these different projects to pin it on. Okay. And I pointed out that all of Steven Seagal's movies up until then were movies where you could put on the poster,
Yes.
Steven Seagal is.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Steven Seagal is Above the Law.
Hmm.
Steven Seagal is Marked for Death. Steven Seagal is Under Siege. You know?
Hmm.
Steven Seagal is what was the one he did that Jeff Robinoff produced? Joan Chen was in it.
Oh, Deadly Ground. That's one of our
Yeah,
better. Wow, I
Steven
should have brought
Seagal
that up.
is on deadly ground.
Next
Okay.
time. Next
Okay.
time.
So I'm doing this in a meeting. So,
Hmm.
we have all these, Steven Seagal is. And then
Right,
we get to
right.
the title I'm talking about. Steven Seagal is addicted to love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
because that's
nobody even got the real joke. Like it didn't get a whole lot of laughs at first because they were seriously considering what I was saying, and they weren't thinking in terms that I was going to somehow pull Steven Seagal's name out of or Addicted to Love out of the big hat of these titles that we were hoarding. And then
right.
I don't remember who directed it, but then we did the movie with Matthew Broderick and Meg Ryan and Checky Cario, where throughout the whole movie you think Checky Cario and Kelly Lynch, and Checky Cario is painted as this really horrible guy, and in the end, it turns out he's the most admirable person in this whole story, but it was just mishandled. The movie was just mishandled.
So to circle back here, I was watching this thinking, I bet this wasn't even written for Seagal. I bet this was written as like a TV episode for Hunter.
Probably.
And someone said, grab me something that's already there and expand it by 30 minutes or whatever. And
But
you
they really
have,
do that. They really do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And I remember when after we did Troy, or it might have been before Troy. It was Wolfgang had done Perfect Storm, and I remember Duncan Henderson coming to our office. I was in Mark Solomon's office at the time, and Duncan
right.
Henderson came in and said, "Do you guys have anything in your library that could stand a remake?" You know?
Hmm.
And then lo and behold, Troy gets made, and we had Helen of Troy. We had a movie called Helen of Troy that I think was, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was one of the MGM movies that we inherited in the Turner merger,
Right.
because MGM had consolidated all these libraries, including ours, and now we had it back. But then Poseidon becomes the next one after Troy, I think, wasn't it?
I think
And
so.
Perfect Storm was from a best-selling novel at the
Yeah,
time.
by
Yeah,
Sebastian Younger. I remember
yeah.
that. And I remember like a lot was riding on that one for Clooney. But so
And it was
we
a great
should,
movie. It really was a good movie. I remember helping to check the prints on it because what we would do is we would marshal the forces of everybody and we were checking because they were delivering them late. And that was one thing about Wolfgang. He wasn't particularly disciplined when it came to the schedule.
mm,
But the stuff he was dealing with was very complicated. So I get it. And he's the right kind of guy because he shows Need a Traffic Cop. He's the right kind of guy to do that kind of movie. Um, but I remember we were scrambling so that we could approve all the soundtracks because we had created this thing called the quad track where because we didn't want to have double and triple inventory of film prints in our vault. So we didn't want to have because I can remember the days before we did that, before we went with quad track, we would get a call. We need a Dolby A version of Unforgiven for a screening. We need a Dolby Digital version for this. We need a DTS for this, and all that. So the quad track was born out of there were four different sort of competing soundtracks that were in vogue at the time that people were using. So you had Dolby Digital, SDDS, and DTS, and then there was also the analog Dolby. Um, SR. It was called Dolby SR. But we managed to put all of those onto one. Every film that went out had all four of those formats on the actual film. And then we only had single inventory in our vault, which was a great thing for us, saving space. But we would have to check this. We'd have to check and approve each one of these because they would shoot it onto film, onto optical. They became optical tracks, and marry it to the film to create composite prints. And then we would have to check each format. And we had a
mhm.
process. We would do the STDS first because that was on the outer edges and was subject to abrasion. So that was the most likely to fail. And we do that, and then we go down the line. And I saw Perfect Storm so many times checking all those different prints and stuff. And I remember saying, "Oh my God." give me reels where the guys are on the boats. I am so sick of all these low life people on the dock, you know? And then I'd have all these just reels of the guys on the boats, and it's like, oh my God, isn't there don't we cut to Washington, D.C. or anything? I mean, I'm so sick of all these characters in this
Yeah.
movie.
Hey, circling back to this real quick, Above the Law, where we were talking about whether or not it was a script or scripted for Seagal, or if it was an episode of Hunter or Magnum PI or something that actually Magnum PI is very plausible, right?
Yeah.
You know, because of the CBS Vietnam subplot and Magnum being a naval intelligence guy with a Vietnam history. But anyway, we were talking about this movie, and Andy Davis, director that you have a lot of respect for, The Fugitive, Under Siege. And we even worked Dennis Verkler, but Terry Simmel was the guy that we assume built Seagal, essentially, with Ovitz. It was a collaborative effort. They basically made the Seagal machine. And I have to say, I tend to agree with Siskel on this one, where I do feel he is kind of above the law, but also above sort of the realities of the combat situations he's in. I would have liked it to be a little more tangible in terms of him getting dropped a couple of times. But that being said, they're both in a way right on this movie. It is kind of what it is, and they didn't. It seemed like Ebert had very low expectations going in and came out like, wow, that was actually a lot better than I thought it was, you know?
Plus, they had a reverence for Andy Davis's work too, having seen the other
Yeah,
things
they
he did
did.
with Chuck Norris. So, and a local Chicago guy that they wanted to root on. Not,
Right.
and I don't wish
Right.
to diminish the work that Andy did at all, you know, because these guys are kind of acting like homers in a way. But and I don't want to diminish
Do you
Andy's
think
work at all
so?
because Andy was very, very good. Yeah, I think they were out promoting the Chicago guys.
Do you
Yeah,
think so? You think so?
yeah,
Because we got the Sun Times and the
yeah.
Tribune angle that
Because then you flip the coin over to Rod Lurie, you know, who I complimented earlier as not
yeah.
being particularly intellectual in his approach to doing the movies that he would actually say on the air, I'm really looking forward to the next James Bond movie. He instead of saying I'm looking forward to the next time Kubrick does something, you know, I'm looking forward to the next James Bond movie. I want to
Right.
see some action sort of thing, you know. Whereas Rod that, you know, was from the very beginning totally disrespecting, denigrating Steven Seagal. He was calling him Fat Boy. Here's Fat Boy. And then it was so funny when Stephen was I think the nicest thing he said about Stephen in Under Siege was that he was wearing an apron so you couldn't see how fat he was.
What was the
You know?
All right, so what was the building across from the main admin building, that little building on the corner on the other side of that gate, the executive gate? What was in that building? It
Oh,
was like
that
an
was the
accountant,
drugstore. Oh, well, the second floor was theatrical production management,
something like that.
and the first floor was the budgeting and estimating department. Yeah.
So I bounced in there once into Ken Goldstein's office because he was based in there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Ken worked with me. Yeah.
And he was always fun to talk to because he was very point blank about things. Big music lover, and you know, that movie came up, and I remember he was on Dudley Ground was the one. I remember him telling me like we had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to put a plane on a gimbal and shoot him like he's flying it because Seagal's angle was, how is my audience going to know I'm flying the plane? And their argument was, well, when the plane's engine shuts off, you climb out. He's like, no, not good enough. But I remember one of the things they were talking about when we were doing Glimmerman, because I was there for that. That was before I worked with Seagal, though. Glimmerman, there was like, they called it the Girdle Man.
Yeah, I can see. Oh, well, and then before that, but it might have been around Glimmerman time when
Hmm.
they added an extra grip with the chin light. Do you remember
That's
that?
right. That's right. They had a chin. Oh my God, I
They had
forgot.
this little Twinkie light. Now in old time movies, like especially in Gone with the Wind, they used it. They'd have a Twinkie light to brighten up an actor's eyes, and I know
Yeah.
they did it to great effect with Vivian Lee to look at those green eyes that Vivian Lee had in Gone with the Wind. But they would have a Twinkie light, and it would usually be above the lens. They had a chin light under the lens to fill because he was, in addition to being I guess as a result of being jowly, he was getting a double chin. Not that I'm anybody to talk about it. I've got a total turkey neck going.
Well, we're talking about the technical side of covering him
But we had
on screen.
the chin light there, which today they would probably use visual effects to just kind of soften,
Hmm.
the lines and stuff.
I love that story though about being in the Undeadly Ground screening, and you get up because he's getting the weapons. You're like, okay, I know the rhythm here, and you had seen the movie.
No,
So
I hadn't seen the
Oh,
movie.
you hadn't seen it by
No,
then? I thought
read
for
the
sure.
script. No, I read the
I
script,
thought
but
maybe you
hadn't
had to
seen the
sign
movie.
off on it.
Oh,
So,
listen, I snuck into that screening. I wasn't supposed to be there.
uh,
And they had that screening at those theaters that were
yeah,
Moore Park and Van Nuys. And they
right.
had half of the theaters were on the north side of Moore Park, and the other two were on the south side of Moore Park.
And
Okay.
everyone would go into Sully's Deli afterwards, which is gone now, and complain about what they had just saw. But you get up.
So I got up because
Yeah.
I could see that he already done that whole bullshit in the TV
Yeah.
movie, dancing around and all that. And
Gold.
and I got to tell you, the big draw for me in that movie is Joan Chen, because I'm absolutely in love with Joan
Well, she
Chen.
can act. She can act. So she's a draw
Um,
anytime.
so anyway, I wanted to see the movie. I wanted to see this preview version, and I had to, Pat Wenz and I managed to get ourselves recruited into it, and we're lying to the recruiting people, telling them, no, we work for TRW as accountants. No, I swear to God. Okay, we would do that, and we were just young enough to be the demographic that they were looking for. So I get up when he's arming himself. So he's cured himself with the mysticism,
Yeah.
smoke, and all that stuff. And I thought this is a good time to go to the men's room because it's going to be crowded when the movie's over. Okay, so so I get up and I'm like in the lower quarter of the. I was near the front. I'm in the lower quarter of that movie, and I'm
Right.
walking up the aisle, which is a ramp. I'm walking up there, and Seagal's in the back. In the back, he's like, "You're going to miss the good stuff."
Yeah. How dare you walk out of this? Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if he noticed me coming back.
Yeah, that's they notice you when you leave. Well, we've talked about this extensively about how different stars approach these screenings, how Mel Gibson was in disguise and
Yeah,
Tom
yeah.
Cruise and stuff. But what's interesting is he's giving you grief for leaving because that's what he remembers. He doesn't remember you coming back. You leaving for a split second is enough to make him. We also talked about how the overages of his directing venture on that is what led to his death, an executive decision, and that's why he
Yeah,
got X'd
yeah,
out
yeah.
quick in that movie.
But you know what?
To-
He did lend his presence in that movie gave it a little bit more. There was a whole quadrant of fans now
Mhm.
who
Yeah.
were going to go see this movie who might not have seen it otherwise. So he gave a little. This is the wrong word, but I'm about to say he gave that movie a little bit more integrity than it might have had otherwise. Although the rest of the cast was very stellar. And I remember, go back at Siskel and Ebert doing their take on that movie, because one of them
We
says,
should.
one of them, and I don't remember which one of the two, said, "Imagine being so confident in a movie that you kill off a major star like Steven Seagal in the second reel." Okay,
Yeah, yeah. We should go back to that one next time. Was it you telling me the story about them looking at it in dailies and Seagal was like, "See, I don't run. I'm not funny when I run." And somebody was telling
No,
us, somebody was in
no.
production where they were talking about how he didn't want to run, or the stunt double was doing the running, and he was pointing out the screen saying, "See, I don't run funny." And the producer was like, "That's not you. That's your stunt double." And I'm trying to remember
That
who
would
that
have
was.
been,
And
but that would have been in the cutting room.
yeah,
Stephen would have
for
gone into,
sure.
he wouldn't have gone in the dailies. He would have gone into the cutting room, and there might have been a thing where the production executive and maybe somebody like Lorenzo
Mhm.
was in there, because this would have been a problem. It would have been a problem if he looked ridiculous. If he was running like he was wearing diapers, that would be a big problem,
Well,
you
it's
know?
funny because he didn't recognize himself on screen. And I think that's one, it might have been Lorenzo actually who had to tell him. I'm sure Lorenzo has hilarious stories
Oh
because
man.
Lorenzo was the guy that had to keep it all in bounds.
Well, you've had Billy Gerber on, right?
Yes.
Billy Gerber would
Love him.
have
Love him.
Billy Gerber would have some. I don't think at one point, eventually, Lorenzo took over and Billy was out. So Lorenzo would have like the stories in like the post Billy Gerber sort of era, but there's so much overlap because they were put in as a team. Lorenzo was there first.
Yeah.
Billy came in, and when Bruce Berman departed, they put the two of them in there together to run it as a team because they thought they would have a Bob and Terry sort of dynamic, and they didn't, but they thought that would happen, and Billy was um, nothing on Billy. Billy was so much more approachable and casual about it and forgiving
Yes.
in so many ways. Whereas Lorenzo was so high strung and he was like a workaholic, total like workaholic. And they sort of perceived that whoever was making the decisions, maybe it was Dick Parsons, but whoever was making those decisions sort of perceived that quality as being more what they needed than what Billy was doing. Although it was hard for me to know where one ended and one began because they were peas in a pod.
Gerber, super easy to be in a room with, hyper intelligent,
Yeah.
very, very charismatic.
Lorenzo's great to be in a room with too. Lorenzo, if I think he might be a little bit guarded, at first. If he came on, and he was sitting there with you, he might be a little bit guarded at first. But I would imagine the story. I would love to. If you ever get him,
Yeah.
I would love to just don't let him know I'm there. I would love to just sit in the background and listen to what he has to say because
I should put in a request and see if he's got the time.
I'll bet he could top anybody that's been on your show. And,
Yeah,
and I
probably.
know that's a big broad spectrum, that's quite a thing for me to say, but I'll bet he could. He would be amazing, absolutely amazing, And look at all the things you could ask him about. I mean, I would not go into the Batman versus Superman territory, but certainly the
Right.
Superman stuff with Nick Cage,
Yeah, or the Dune stuff.
Oh yeah, because he wanted to take Dune.
Mhm.
I was really sorry. I saw Dune. I liked what I saw when the Warner Brothers version of Dune. I really liked what I saw. My wife was the one who really loved the book and everything, and so it was more important that she see it. But I really liked both parts one and two, and I was really disappointed that Lorenzo's name wasn't attached because I would have loved for Lorenzo to have gotten credit for that.
Yeah. Mm. Well, we'll see if we can get him. It'd be a fun conversation.
Yeah.
You know
And
what? I'm going to have
see if you
to.
can get Basil. Get Basil Ironic to talk about John Wick.
I reached out to Basil to do it because I wanted to talk to him about those early days, and we'll see. We'll see if we can land.
Well,
him.
he was the other guy involved. Okay, forget I even said that. I'll tell you off the air. But he might have heard some of the stuff that I've told you, and he might think that you're out to get him or something. But
No, we don't do
but
that
tell
here.
Basil went to Villanova, and I went to Villanova too, and I've seen him at Villanova functions, and I have to remind him, oh yeah, I went to Villanova. I grew up in Garrett Hill. I keep telling him I grew up in Garrett Hill, and because he's from, I think he's from North Jersey or New York. We have a lot of people that go to Villanova from Jersey and New York.
We're talking about Warner Brothers feature development. If I remember right, it was Basil, Kevin McCormick,
Yep.
Robinoff, who would later run the studio. He was the Warshawski's agent.
Yes.
Lynn
Harris.
Lorenzo de Bonaventura. Who
Lorenzo,
else?
yeah. Lynn Harris.
Courtney Valente. Courtney Valente, whose dad ran the academy, I think. Jack Valente.
No, he was MPAA. He was.
Is that who was?
Jack Valente was the MPAA. They do the ratings, but they are also our lobbyists in Washington.
Right.
So like if you're sending a print to the White House, you actually send it to the MPAA, and then the Secret Service goes and picks it up and brings it to the White House. I had to call Bill Clinton's secretary to tell her. I can't remember her name now, but Betty Curry.
Okay.
Is that her name?
No.
She was in the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. She got tied up in that because
we
she was
interviewed
the
Monica
gatekeeper.
Lewinsky. Actually, we interviewed. Yeah, we did. She's very interesting. No, I didn't deal with the White House.
Betty was the gatekeeper for all that stuff. So they thought she must have been involved in somehow getting Monica in or out or whatever the deal was. But I remember I got a call from I got Barry Levinson and Paula Weinstein had done one of those Baltimore pictures. I got a call from Paula Weinstein. Hey, I was on the phone with Betty Carey. I'm pretty sure it was Betty Carey. I was on the phone with Betty Carey. Bill Clinton wants to see this movie, and we're going to arrange it, and we need it to get delivered to the Northeast Gate. And then I cut Paula off, and I said, I'm familiar. I was a White House correspondent in college. I'm familiar with the location. And that's certainly the gate I would tell you to take it to, but we do have a procedure in place, and don't you worry, I will take care of it. It was something Heights, Liberty
Right.
Heights. And I said, Paula, don't worry about it. I will take care of it. And then I called Betty Carey. Okay. And I still remember the phone number. Okay. Okay. So, because the White House at the time was 202-456-1414. And then Bill Clinton, the direct line to Clinton's office at the time was 202-456 2871 or 2871 or 79, something like that. And I called Betty and I said, this is Bill Daly from Warner Brothers. Bill Daly, I'm from Warner Brothers. I just got off the phone with Paula Weinstein not 10 minutes ago about this print in Liberty Heights. And she goes, oh, yeah, I know about that. And I said, okay, so we actually have a procedure in place. We send them to the MPAA, and then the Secret Service comes. They'll call you guys, and the Secret Service will come pick them up. She goes, oh, that's great. That's great. I don't have to do anything. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And I said, look, but if there's a problem, you call me. I gave her my number. And you call me if there's any problem at all. You just call me and I'll take care of it. And once again, my name is Bill Daly, and she said, "Oh yeah, I remember your name." Because at first I thought you were the secretary. Okay, Bill Daly was Secretary of Transportation under Clinton. I didn't realize that. Bill Daly of the Chicago Dailies.
All right, there you go.
You know. So yeah, that was a funny thing.
Yeah, so it was Courtney.
2876.
Who else was in that department? It was Polly Cohen.
Polly Cohen, yeah. And then
Was it
Polly
Jessica
later-
Goodman?
Jessica Goodman, yes.
Jessica Goodman.
Jessica's married to Lorenzo now.
Oh, really?
Oh, no. I'm wrong. No, Lorenzo's wife, no, she didn't work she worked at Warner Brothers, but not for Warner Brothers. Kimberly Beebe is married to Lorenzo. She worked for a company that was in building 133, Producers One.
133, where Bill Daly was.
Suite 103 is where Kimberly was. She was my next door neighbor for a couple of years. Oh God, the blonde-haired guy who had to deal with Columbia. He was in 1941.
Perry Lang.
Perry Lang would have known
Love him.
BB. Yeah, I do too. Perry would have known BB.
Yeah.
And Luc Besson would have known
Yeah.
BB.
David
Or,
Foster,
Kimberly.
producer David Foster
Yeah.
of The Thing. He was
Probably-
also in
probably-
133.
He was on the second floor, but he probably would have known Kimberly too. Yeah, Jessica Goodman was married to the head of production at DreamWorks.
And
I
then
forget his first name.
head of production at
And then there
DreamWorks,
was
what year?
Herb Gronalnick. Herb Gronalnick. He was the he did most of the Kevin Costner movies, the Tig stuff.
Right.
Um,
And then Dan Lin. Dan Lin was in there
oh
too.
yeah, Dan Lin. Yeah, Dan Lin was there. Yeah, Dan went off, and now he's the head of Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right.
It's
And
great people. And before them, there was Lucy Fisher
mhm.
and Lisa Henson. I mean, we had some really, really great production execs during my tenure at Warner Brothers. And
Yeah.
we had every year that I was at Warner Brothers, every year, we were either number one or number two at the box office.
That's right.
And we had a stellar group of people bringing in the projects to the studio. I mean, and then we had really good producers who were resident on the lot, like Richard Donner and
Yeah.
Joel Silver
Right.
and Luc Besson, who mostly did like Columbia stuff, but Luc was kind of resident on a lot of
Well,
stuff.
and I say it all the time, but in our building alone, 81, we had Joel Schumacher, Wolfgang Peterson, Christopher Nolan, Clint Eastwood, the
Yeah.
Warshawskis. What's
David
his name?
Heyman,
Who was David
Dave,
Heyman? Akiva.
Kiva Goldsman, right, right.
Yeah, we also had
And then
Canton.
In the Ray Stark building, you had Mel Gibson with
Yeah,
Icon. And Icon was making movies for everybody, not just
right,
us.
right.
So we had
Wow.
Mark Canton was the head of creative development when I first got there, and then he
Yeah,
was
and then he,
replaced by Bruce Berman, and then Berman by Billy and Lorenzo, and then Lorenzo by himself, and then Jeff
right,
Robinoff, and then I left.
and
But
then
then
Canton.
After Jeff left, it became Kevin Tsujihara took over. Oh, it was Greg Silverman was head of that, and then when Greg left, I think it was Courtney Valenti took over.
Well,
And
Canton
Courtney's at
left,
Amazon. Canton went to Sony with Goober and Peters, right? John Peters and
but then he came back,
Goober.
right? Or did he go to Sony twice?
No, he might have still had an office there because he was an independent producer.
Because
He might
he
have
was
still
my
had an office
neighbor.
there.
He was my neighbor.
Yeah,
He was
but
John
he
Milius's
wasn't.
neighbor.
Oh, he got involved in some of the projects. Like I
Mm.
think he had a hand in the replacements, if I'm not mistaken.
He had a hand in the replacements. Yeah, because we'd see him around the Bel Air production office, which
And
was 66.
yeah,
But also 300. He had a hand in 300.
it's
Um,
possible. Yeah.
I just remember him and
That
Milius
was
would
a
go
great
at
and
it.
Greg Silverman was
Yeah, yeah.
he was like when Lorenzo was there. I don't know who Billy's right hand guy was. It might have been Lorenzo, and then Lorenzo was there, and Jeff became his right hand guy, and then Kevin McCormick became when Jeff got moved up to president of Warner Brothers Entertainment. So where everybody was reporting to him, Kevin McCormick became the president of Warner Brothers Pictures. And Greg
Wait, did
Silverman
you?
became the right-hand guy.
So I was going to get into the Canton Milius feud that was
Yeah.
constant in Building 81. It's a landmine. It was a landmine on the
I
second floor,
I was never aware of it.
a minefield. But did you like Kevin McCormick?
Oh, I love Kevin McCormick. I still like Kevin McCormick. He's a great guy. Absolutely
Hmm.
great guy. He's working as a consultant, or he's like a consulting executive. He's I know he left as an independent producer and
Hmm.
then came back. And but he's involved in all the stage productions. So Beetlejuice on Broadway, that's Kevin's stuff,
Mm.
you know.
Wow, it was certainly a wild time and roster.
Kevin is one of the smartest guys. I mean, I used to say that all the time. When I was there, Kevin literally was the smartest guy in the room. Honest to God,
Quite possible.
you know?
Um, Entertaining. Now what we're going to do is we're going to end the show and we're going to talk about all these people for real off air.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't have anything bad to say.
No, neither do I really. I don't think um it's funny. I mean, Polly Cohen was the exec for Harry Potter, I think.
She
And
was let me tell you about Polly. Polly came to Warner Brothers as an intern from USC, and I think she was in the Ray Stark program. The way
mhm.
the Ray Stark program worked was that they would come in and they would be in a department for like a week or two or three, and then they'd move on to another department. So Polly was in theatrical production, she was in post, she was in marketing, she was in distribution. They would go everywhere. They would learn everything everywhere. And I never asked Polly like what her favorite place was in during her tenure there. But the other people that came through there, I would ask them, I would see them at lunch and I would ask them, you know, what was your favorite place to be? And it was always post-production for them because we made it fun for them.
Yeah.
They learned a boatload and because post-production is actually involved in everything.
You
We're
don't
involved in
think they
budgeting and
told you
scheduling.
you don't think they told you it was post-production because they were talking to
No.
you?
Well, it's possible, but I was always very upfront with everybody on everything, you know, and I would tell them if you have a problem in another department, you give me a call
Yeah.
and maybe I can give you background so that you don't get caught up in a political thing. I never once got a call complaining, but they did. But I've had people come to me and say, when I was with you, that was the best time I had when I was there.
No
'Cause
doubt. I'm sure
not
of it.
everybody ended up at Warner Brothers. Polly did. A lot of them ended up at other places, but Polly finished that program. She didn't come directly. I think she went to propaganda, if I'm not mistaken. I think she went to propaganda.
Hmm.
She might have gone to work for David Lynch. I'm not sure what what the deal was, but I know she went elsewhere, and then she came in as a creative exec, and she quickly shot upwards. And then she became the Harry Potter person, and then she moved above that, and then eventually moved over to Warner Independent Pictures. So when Alan Horn had created Warner Independent, and I think Alan made a mistake, not in creating Warner Independent, but he put Jeff Robinoff and Steve Papazian, Jeff Robinoff's in charge of it. So Mark Gill and Michael Andreen and Paul, I forget Paul's last name. They reported to Jeff. And then as far as production management stuff goes, Steve Papazian was the guy. And I think the reason for that, I think they fought for that. Jeff wanted them to report to him, and Steve wanted the production aspect to report to him because they didn't want someone to come back and say, how come these guys at Warner Independent can do the movies cheaper than you can? Because you know that it was set up and that was going to happen. Okay. I've told you the story about how Jeff came into a meeting, the Tuesday morning meeting, one time with a budget from a Fox movie. And he says, hey, Steve, to Steve Papazian across the table, Steve, I've got this budget here from Fox. And he slides it across this huge table. Everything was wide enough in that room that you couldn't reach over and punch anybody.
Mhm.
I don't think that was the intention, but I made that observation.
Maybe.
But he slides it across the table to Steve. And Steve's looking through it. I mean, earnestly, he's not looking at every single line item, but he's looking through it. And Jeff says, so how come we can't do a movie like this? And Steve, without hesitation, Steve says, we could, but then you'd have a shitty Fox movie.
And that remains the greatest executive response ever, in my opinion, to the top guy. That was the greatest, so point blank and so accurate.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
Wouldn't you just love to be in the room when that went down? Well, you were there. I wasn't, but the reaction of, gold. That is gold.
But we weren't snickering. We agreed with Steve.
Of course.
I'm sure there were people that who weren't completely in the know of what goes into production management. So like maybe some of the lawyers were snickering because they had lawyers, they had distribution people, story department was there, music was there.
God bless Steve Papazian. And that is a good place to end it, because why not end it with an absolute classic response like that?
Yeah.
Good job. Well, Bill Daly has been my guest. He's one of our favorites around here, former Warner Brothers senior VP turned producer, Bill Daly. We had a chance to look at Siskel and Ebert, looking at some of the movies we experienced. Well, certainly you did, going back to Batman Forever. Well,
yes,
Batman,
that was Batman Returns.
Batman Returns, right? Batman Returns, and a couple of Seagal favorites, because we always need to somehow work in an actor we both worked with, just in case the stories start flying.
There's also a way to segue into, when we talk about Batman Returns, because Tim Burton came back and Michael Keaton was back to do it. And then Tim Burton was attached to the Superman thing, and he was the one who wanted Nicolas Cage. And I remember a lot of people going, and even I thought that was kind of bizarre. But people are going, wow, really? I mean, it's like, well, and I didn't say it out loud in a meeting, but I did say it to Mark Solomon and probably to Sean Wimmer. I did say, well, Tim wanted Michael Keaton for Batman, and everybody wondered what the hell this was all about. I mean, really, Michael Keaton, a comedian? This is who you want to be the Batman, And then they couldn't imagine that any of those movies without Michael Keaton.
Right.
So
Yeah.
my thing was give Tim a chance, at least let him do the whatever testing he was doing, and they were going to do something magical with the suit that it would light up or something like that. And I only saw some of the tests because at the time I was going off to different cities to do these screenings, for the previews that we were doing.
Hmm.
I was usually the guy who had to travel and do that, so
Who
I
was it?
didn't
Was it?
see every one of those tests that we did. But I'd seen enough of them, and John Peters was still there.
Yeah.
He wasn't so much involved in the Superman stuff, although they were going to pair him, I think, with McGee to do it. And John Peters was like you hear the accounts of John and all the stuff with Sony and everything, but I really like John. John was very he was a different kind of person to have in the room, and he was entertaining in a way without being like way over the top.
Yeah, I know you like him. Is he the one who autographed the book for you?
I have the book right over there, so when we finish, I'll show it to you.
No,
Unless
you did
wanna
show it to
keep-
me before.
Unless you want to keep rolling, and I can.
So
Show
we should
you.
tell everyone though what we're talking. So he signed the book. What was it? I'll do better next time, or
Oh yeah, I promised to work on the budget or keep it under budget or something like that the next time. Yeah.
I remember Keith Hamilton was telling me about the cost of the Nicolas Cage tests, and he was like, "I don't know what they're doing."
Well, there was a lot of money being spent on the suit
Yeah.
itself, and then
It was expensive.
an unforgivable amount of money on wigs because he was losing his hair. And absolutely
What's an unforgivable amount? When you say unforgivable amount, what's that? What's that figure?
It's the figure that would make you shake your head and wonder who the hell's in charge over there. I mean,
$100,000?
I don't know I'm sure we spent more than that, but I don't know what I don't know what wigs cost. Okay, I don't know whether he has allergy issues or whether he was interjecting where he wanted it, or maybe he wears wigs in his real life. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't know what the number is, but it was unbelievable. Okay. But I just called it unforgivable because it all went to waste.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Lorenzo could tell you.
He could when we have him on. He'll give us. When we have Lorenzo, we'll get all the answers. Yeah, but it was funny because the rumor going around was, I remember when we did $12 million worth of reshoots on Collateral Damage, and everyone was like, "Fuck, that's another movie." And probably the same. It felt the same with the Superman stuff with Cage. Like people were like, "We could shoot a movie for what they're spending on." Like it was
some of the stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of that feeling. Like because they were pointing at me because I was trying to get a movie going.
Yeah.
And they're like, "We could do your movie." That always rubbed it in. We could do your movie for what they're spending on. And I'm like, "Oh, don't
Why aren't you?
classify it
Why
like
aren't
that."
you doing my movie? Why don't? How about if I sell you the wigs? And then you could go to that Nadine's Beauty Supply there on Riverside Drive and just buy costume wigs and bring them in and charge them $40 million.
God.
Your movie, Night Fever. What do you think that would have cost?
Now or then?
Then. And
Maybe.
you were getting a lot of volunteer work. You were getting a lot of people I would have worked for Scale.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Mark Todd would have worked for Scale, and all the other people who were Screen Actors Guild members would have worked for Scale.
I mean, you probably could have done the movie for somewhere between $3 to $6 million, I would think.
Yeah,
You know?
I would think so. Your biggest expense would have been film stock, camera rentals, locations, and then whatever crew overtime. I don't know if you'd get away with a low budget IA deal. But
we would certainly try.
The big expense for you would be the same things that are the big expense for students: film stock, camera rentals, dolly tracks and that kind of stuff, car rentals for for whatever the action things were going to be, and location rentals.
Yeah, and you had a scene with Christopher Walken.
I know, Christopher
as
Walken,
the anger management counselor.
Anger management counselor, yeah.
Tony Howard at ICM was his agent at the time, and I thought I'm in there because she was the casting director for Uncommon Valor when Milius produced it. And I thought that's my in. We have anyway. Those are Those are fun days, man. We should have done it. We should have done it.
That
Damn
would
it.
have been so cool. It would have been
It
cool.
would have been, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I
It
remember
would
I
have
grew
been.
sideburns for it because it was a
Yeah,
70s thing. I grew
that's right.
sideburns for it. I gained weight for it, which I should curse you about because my weight's been out of control ever since.
You got to blame somebody. No, we had a
Yeah.
great cast and we had some great like craftsmen kind of building up around it. And it would have been nice to take a crack at it. And I remember what's his name? Curiosity.
Frank.
I remember he was like such an advocate for it. He's like, this is more inventive than anything we're working. Like he would, Curiosity was pretty honest, in his office. Um, I
Well, let
kind of
me tell
miss
you
him
about
actually.
Frank. What happened with Frank took over for when I first got there. Um, Stuart Baird was a well-known, renowned editor that you had to take seriously if he was going to give you notes about a project.
Hmm.
And creative development hired him to sort of look at all the movies and tell he could talk to directors and to editors in their language without it
Right.
sounding like it was some
Yeah.
of create without it sounding like it was a creative executive who didn't really have the onset experience that would have been required for them to pay attention to them. Okay, that's a polite way of saying it, but that
Hmm.
the guys on the set would have been a lot more derisive than that. And but Stewart then latched on with Richard Donner and did Lethal Weapon and onward, and then they hired Dee Dee Allen, and Dee Dee was even more revered than she, she was more revered and less cutthroat than Stewart. And they listened to her, and she was very direct, absolutely direct. I remember I was we were watching dailies together, and she leaned over to talk to one of the creative execs, okay, and we were talking about a scene, and she's
Hmm.
going, okay, okay, now where is this scene? Is this before he fucks her? I mean, that's Dee okay. And even I was like, okay, that's a little outside the polite society sort of thing. But Dee Dee was very direct. And then and she was unbelievably accessible. So I
Hmm.
remember I was giving a tour to some Bradley University students, I believe, who were they had an inn at the studio somewhere, and they asked me if I would take them around. And I would take them into dailies and stuff like that.
Right.
And there was someone who was in that group, a student who had contacted Dee Dee, and Dee Dee responded and everything. So I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." So I went in, I halted dailies. And I brought Dee Dee out, and Dee Dee was like, "Oh, it's nice to meet you." I mean, Dee Dee was like unbelievably accessible. Dee Dee left. Dee Dee went on with Curtis Hanson to do a Michael Douglas, Tobey Maguire movie, Wonder Boys,
Yeah.
and they hired Frank. They pulled Frank from Donner. Frank was doing Donner stuff then because Stewart became a director. So then Frank was doing that stuff, and they got Frank to do it. And then at some point, Time Warner, and I don't know if this was the Jeffrey Bucas era. I think it was because it sounds like him, where they said you have to cut 10% of your spending across the board, 10%. So that meant layoffs and stuff like that. And creative development, rather than lay off one of the useless people they had there, and believe me, they did have some useless people. So
Oh
instead
yeah.
of laying off the useless people there, they decided, okay, we're gonna do away with this position that Frank Urosity had. That's when the movies started to take a turn for the worse. Honest to God, I noticed that. I noticed that they took because there was no watchful eye on the projects anymore, who were calling the cutting rooms and asking, "Do you have coverage for this scene? We just
Yeah.
watched
Right.
it,"
Hmm.
and that's a lot of what they were doing. And the movies started to go downhill. And I ran into Frank at a social function, like a wedding or a funeral, or well, not funerals or social functions per se, but I ran into Frank and I told him, I got to tell you, Frank, I'm not blowing smoke, and you know enough about me that I don't do that. But the movies have gone downhill since you left because you're not watching them. And he said, "Wow, wow." He called me Billy all the time. "Wow, Billy, that's really nice of you to say." And I said, "No, but I'm serious. I'm not being nice. I'm telling you, that's what's going on."
Hmm. I remember he had a big poster of Midway behind his desk on the wall because he had cut it.
Oh.
And he was like, I guess maybe that might have been his first job. I'm not sure. But that was
The
the
Charlton
movie.
Heston one, Midway
Yeah. Yeah.
with
I mean,
Censor.
his name is on like 400 movies as editor, it seems like.
Yeah.
But yeah, Midway was the big one behind his desk.
And his daughter Marianne was a good editor too. She came up,
Yeah.
and I believe she's editing. And they has son Frankie who went into
His son worked for Silver
I think he did.
for a
Yeah, I
time.
think he
Yeah.
did. And then I lost contact with everybody, so I don't know what's Marianne and Frankie and Frank Sr. I totally lost touch with everybody.
Well, God bless the old guard, man. Bill Daly's everyone's favorite former Warner Brothers senior VP. Definitely ours.
Until you get Lorenzo on. You'll forget about me quickly. You will forget about me quickly.
No,
Yes,
impossible,
you will.
my friend.
Yes, you will.
Impossible.
You know what?
Impossible.
And then at some point you're going to say, Bill Daly was on. Okay. And he'll say, Bill who? Yeah,
No, he won't.
No, he won't. But he'll say, "Oh, he's so full of shit. I've heard some of that stuff."
Yeah. I love when I send a request to some of these old veterans and they're like, I've heard this and I gotta get on there to set the record straight or some angle.
Yeah.
But Lorenzo would be fun. We'll get you on when he
I really liked Lorenzo a lot. He was
yeah.
And I liked Jeff a lot too. I liked Jeff. There's in the creative development group, there's only one person it's not that I didn't like this person as much as I didn't have a whole lot of respect for them.
Who was it?
Off the air, I'll tell you who that was.
All right, well then we're getting off the air right now.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Combat Radio with everyone's favorite, Bill
Yes.
Daly. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Ethan. It's good to see you.
Likewise, man. Always good to see you too. Fun stuff, buddy.
Is this okay? Hi, my name is David Pasquesi. You may recognize me from television program or motion picture, or not. NMOSD is a central nervous system disorder, and it's pretty brutal. You can help. Go to GuthyJacksonFoundation.org and donate today to help them find a cure. GuthyJacksonFoundation.org.